Welcome back to BNC Live, everyone. We're continuing the conversation as President Biden prepares to take the stage of a divided nation in tonight's State of the Union address. Joining me now on what we can expect to hear from the president's address is BNC political contributor and political strategist Amisha Cross, along with Keisha King, the executive director of education and membership with Moms for America and host of the Keisha King Show, and political director of the ACLU, Christopher Bruce. Thanks to all of you for sticking with us through the commercial break. Chris, I'm going to start with you because we know that voting has been a big issue in terms of President Biden on his agenda. He hasn't been able to get things through the way people would like. How likely do you think it is that he will bring this up, and how important is it that he brings this up tonight?
Oh, that is such a great question and a tricky one when it comes down to it, because voting was a pivotal issue in his campaign, and we have really seen little to actually no action from our Congress to do that. Now, you're blaming that on President Joe Biden because he did campaign that he was able to work with anybody within the Senate, and the Senate seems to be his biggest problem right now because the House has passed the bills. They have passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. They have passed the Freedom to Vote Act. And yet in the Senate, which is controlled by Democrats, you have yet to be able to get over the filibuster. And you've had other Democrats who said they were perfectly fine with the way the filibuster was going, or actually go ahead and claim that they are for African Americans being able to vote. They just do not want to remove the white supremacist tools like the filibuster that keeps that from happening. So President Joe Biden needs to address the nation of saying why these things have not happened. Why are there still problems within the South and across the nation of certain legislators and certain parties making sure that Black people are not able to vote? If he does not bring this up, that's going to be a horrible part of his speech. People are going to be asking more about it and his plans for the future to actually get this done. Otherwise, there's going to be a serious problem when it comes to the midterms and again in 2024.
And Keisha, what are your thoughts on President Biden in terms of the way he's handled social justice issues under his administration and his presidency? Of course, we saw several trials. We saw the killing of Black men and others, violence, racism. What are your thoughts on how he's addressed this, and should he be discussing that in tonight's State of the Union address? Your thoughts?
I get when I hear Joe Biden talk about Black Americans, I feel that he talks about us as if we're not capable or if we're not competent. He says things like, Black Americans don't know how to turn on their laptops or to get in line for, the vaccine, or we don't, if you don't vote for me, you're not Black. The way he talks to Black America, who has supported him tremendously, is very insulting to me, quite honestly. I think, with his support of Robert Byrd in the past and KKK members, I find it sometimes it's like he's telling what he really thinks about Black Americans. I would like to see a lot more than just symbolism and lip service. There are things that do need a real addressing in Black communities, and I don't feel that the president really truly understands those needs just simply by the way that he talks about Black Americans.
Amisha, one of the criticisms that Republicans have of President Biden, Black Republicans in particular, is that promises are made to the Black community, but then not completely fulfilled. What are your thoughts on that and how he should handle that, if at all, in tonight's speech?
Absolutely, and I'll get to that in a moment. I feel like Keisha comes from the school of Candace Owens, and I almost thought I was on Fox News for a minute. But to your point, I think that this is a president who knows that what he is up against and what he has to fight. He knows what his polling numbers are. He has internal polling as well. He knows where America's pressure points are. Specifically to the Black community, he's going to have to address the things that brought Black people out to the polls to begin with. We're talking about those issues around criminal justice reform, the Justice and Policing Act that we didn't see moving forward. We're talking about those issues related to small business owners, particularly small business owners who are Black and Black women, because Black women have the largest share of small businesses and are not necessarily seeing post-pandemic the level of assistance that was assumed would come their way. With that being said, I think that this president also has to lean in on and have conversations, the tough conversations about what's going on across many communities of color and what it actually means to not be able to bring that level of consensus, to Chris's point a moment ago. Yesterday's price isn't today's price. Yesterday's Senate isn't today's Senate. With that being said, this is a president who comes from a Senate legacy of being able to work across the aisle. Yes, and that does include with some segregationists. But if you were able to work with segregationists 40, 50 years ago plus, but are not able to do it today with a Republican Party that is largely run by the segregationists, it behooves you to make other plans. It behooves you to create structures that allow you to make America the democracy or structure that it has always purported itself to be, especially when the Black community consistently gets left out of that democracy. And yet we're the only people who come back time and time again to try to save it. This is a president who recognizes what he's up against, but also recognizes that even within his own party, there are individuals who are not willing to take that step forward because they're afraid of what might happen in their own districts. The votes of Black people, the residents of Black people, the
be
politics
stronger
of Black
about
people
that?
don't always matter.
Amisha?
I'm sorry?
Amisha, I'm wondering if he should be stronger about that. And I actually I'd like Keisha to respond to you actually on that.
Should he be stronger on that? I think that Biden is doing exactly what he wants to do. I don't think that, like he has said in the past, he's able to work with across the aisle. Well, since he's been able to do that, so he says, why isn't he showing us that now? Why? I think that's because a lot of Americans, Black Americans in particular, are not, we're not buying it anymore. We're not buying these broken promises. We're not buying that, we should just be voting along, with the Democrats just because they are, giving us a lot of lip service. We want to see action. And we don't want policies that do not benefit our community. We don't want policies that perpetuate death. We don't want policies where you're just going to send, smoking kits to our communities. What does that even say? To me, that says exactly what he thinks of our communities and Black people in general. Time after time again, we have supported him, and look what we get when we support Democrats. The voting rights. We're supposed to be, lock and step. He supposedly got 81 million votes, largely supported by Black folks. Now all of a sudden we can't vote. It's insulting and it's patronizing. It is not representative of Black Americans. I don't know any Black American that cannot get an ID and that doesn't want IDs to vote. They are symbolic talking points. That's all we ever get.
Chris, I'd like to have you respond.
Oh, I am so glad you came to me because I would love for anyone to come to the state of Georgia where Senate Bill 202 was passed last year, where they had specifically said if this bill passes, over 100,000 people who do not have voting ID cards will not be able to vote. Okay, that's it's a fact. There's nothing else against that. And you have areas where I'm not just talking about the Black community, I'm talking about the white community, people of color communities in rural areas that do not have a Department of Driving Services where they can drive to get an ID to vote. There are a lot of things that are in place right now that are making it more difficult for people to vote across this country. And unless we actually come together, in 2016, you had 13% of African American males vote for Donald Trump. In 2020, that number went up to 20%. We don't know what's going to happen in 2022 or 2024, but unless we actually do come together and say we are going to
rise, Chris?
Well,
why do you think there is
it
that
really
rise?
does come down to messaging. Yeah, it's really coming down to what are we putting out in the community of saying, is Joe Biden working for us? Is Donald Trump working for us? Is the Republican Party and Democratic Party working for us? Now, we should be having those conversations about who is the best party or who are the right people to represent our communities. What is important, though, is to make sure that our interests are being upheld and comparing both of them. So if you have a president who has lived up to his campaign promises saying, I'm going to put a Black woman on the Supreme Court, hold him accountable for that, which is what he's doing right now. If you have another one who's saying, I'm going to work on Black maternity wealth and put $6 billion in communities to make sure that Black women can give birth safely, hold them accountable for that, because that's what's in the American Rescue Plan. And the other issues that are coming up, there is no president that's flawless. That goes along with Obama as well. But when it comes down to it, us coming together as a community of demanding better investment within it, President Joe Biden has done that. Does he need to do more? Yes. Comparing it to others, though, We have to be careful about the messages that we put out there because otherwise you're going to disenfranchise people even more or just tell them not to vote, which is the worst thing that can happen.
Panelists, you've all raised really excellent points. Thank you so much for being with us here on BNC. And I know you'll be watching along with us tonight when BNC will have extensive coverage of the President's State of the Union address. Our special coverage begins right here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be sure to stick around after the address for lots of reaction and analysis, including the first ever Congressional Black Caucus response, available only here on BNC. That is tonight with Texas Representative Colin Allred. We'll carry that live immediately after the State of the Union address. Be sure to stay tuned for that.